What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Biblical Hitman. It's me, Steven, your host of the show. Joining us yet again is the man, the myth, the legend, Gary Wayne, folks. No need for introductions. The name is enough. But listen, if it's your first time or you're returning, you want to support the show, it's free. Head on over to YouTube. That's the video format that we use for this show. While you're there, smash that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends, drop comments down below, because that's the place where I get to engage with the audience. Pretty much anyone that comes on the show, we get to engage with the audience directly in that way. And listen, hey, if you're not, into the video stuff, head on over to the audio. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, and Spotify. We're pretty much on everything, though. And while you're there, if you like the show, drop a 5-star review. It helps the show flow through the algorithms, folks. And if you like the show, why not share it with others? And also, while you're there, comment everything, follow everything, and hit that notification bell. We post every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And who knows, I might kick it up once in a while and drop some bonus episodes for a fourth one during the week if I'm feeling froggy enough. And listen, hey, everyone that's listening, I want to just say that I appreciate everyone getting through the ad space. I know it sucks, but I'm working on some sort of program to see if maybe I can provide ad-free content at some point with my agenda, which is God's agenda, and this whole entire show. But I have appreciation and a lot of love for everyone that is tuning in to each episode. But with all that said, Gary, brother, welcome back.
Well, thank you for inviting me back, and so happy to be back with you and looking forward to another good show. I got a lot of good feedback from the first one we did last spring, as I recall.
Yeah. It's always in-depth conversations. It's always so many things that we cover, so many topics that we get pulled to. Having you on the show, please, for the audience that may not be familiar with your work, who does live under a rock, please let them know, a little bit about yourself and where they can support you the most.
Sure. So I like to call myself a Christian contrarian, and whether or not it's biblical research or outside the Bible, I want to verify things for myself. And any research I'm doing outside the Bible, I measure against what's in the Bible. And so it has to be consistent with what's in the Bible if I'm going to sort of use it as reference, or I'll just sort of specifically say, this is what they believe, or this is what it says. So I try and keep some discipline to it. And because I do it in such a way that I go deeper and quite disciplined on what I'm using for my conclusions and things, is I can be put in a contrarian position, sort of swimming upstream, whether it's biblical doctrine or it is outside the Bible, but I can support all of my positions. And again, if people aren't familiar with who I am, if you've never seen some of the research I've done or some of the details I provide to show veracity to what I'm talking about, you'll be a little bit surprised. I can back up everything I say, and if I speculate, that's a whole different thing. So it's an opinion or a speculation. And I'm an author of 2 books, the Genesis 6 Conspiracy Part 1, Genesis 6 Conspiracy Part 2. I am working on a Part 3, but been sidetracked on other projects and things. And there's a novel that's going to be coming out called the Oprimo Conspiracy, AI's Covenant with Babylon. And it is a novel, it is fiction, but my role in the book, I didn't make the characters, I didn't do the narrative. I just provided the chronology of end time events and how the characters' names and information about who they are, what their bloodlines are, what organizations they might be in. I provided information on all of that, locations, why they're important. So it's going to be kind of interesting if people sort of zoom into the details that are described in the book in terms of, where, who, and those types of things. It's going to be sort of a chase for people. In other words, let's go investigate. So when we introduce the Antichrist name, for example, we got a specific name in there as one example. I won't give out the name yet because we're not through editing yet. Things might change, but it's very interesting, what's in the name. So anyways, look forward to that. It should be out sometime in the new year. And book 3 probably is going to be a little bit longer, based on the projects I've been doing. And so, if people wanted to get,
Sorry, you said longer. It's great. I love it. I love it. I love it. Because the more information, the better, man. You know.
Yeah, well, I'll try and keep it shorter, but the detail of the information in the end notes is going to make it a sizable book as well. So if people want to get a hold of me, go to my website, the Genesis6conspiracy.com, Genesis 6, the number 6conspiracy.com. I have a little bit there about me. I have a generous excerpt of all 84 chapters of book 2, all 98 chapters of book 1. If you want to support me, if you like what I say, I don't take donations. I only do book sales. And if a conference makes money that I'm participating in, I'll take money from that. If a show on Hollow Earth sort of goes through on television, we're in the pilot process and looking forward to that. And then I probably might get revenue from something like that as well. But book sales are basically my measurement in terms of how I'm making contact with people in the public place and a measurement of whether or not I'm having any sort of impact. So there, you can go to the buy now page to get a signed copy. There are 3 different buy pages as you bring up the menu. Buy page 1 is book 1, buy page 2 is book 2, buy page 3 is the bundling. There are discounts on every page. If you live in Canada, there's a Canadian page. If you live in the US, there's a US page. If you live anywhere else in the world, there is an international page. So that's the easiest way to buy the book and support me directly. If you wanted to buy it from Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, or BarnesandNoble.com, I have links directly on that website over to there. You can buy the printed copy. I also have links over to Amazon for the digital version of both books and also to Amazon for the audible version of both books.
Nice, man. No, yeah, the Audible stuff is awesome. People, listen, you can go ahead, you could do your gardening, you could do your running, your morning walk, your exercise, whatever it is, while listening to a lot of great research that Gary's, put together over
Yeah,
a long time, more than a couple of decades. So, brother, this conversation is going to go and start in a certain area where um, I most recently listened to Ryan Bledsoe's podcast, which is Bledsoe Said So, and seems to be a Gnostic Christian, and he's pushing a lot of information in the narrative that there is a divine feminine. And I think there's something to it, but I think that there's a twist on it as well, especially coming from, with Gnosticism in
yeah,
general. Do you want to kind of break that down for us? And I'm not
sure.
sure where you want to start.
Well, yeah, let's just sort of talk about Gnostic Christianity. And so people have sort of a better basis for the lens that Bledsoe would be looking at things through. So Gnosticism is a polytheist religion, rooted in Greek. It's morphed into a syncretic philosophy religion that is trying to incorporate all the ancient religions of the world back home and then bring in through invasions into monotheism back into that in preparation for the Babylon religion for the end time. And so Gnosticism is the religion of secret societies. Gnosticism believes that Jesus was a great teacher, as he's described as the teacher of righteousness in their understanding of the Dead Sea Scrolls with the Essenes. And also they believe he was a prophet, but not the Son of God. So there's a distinct variation, and it's part of how they draft patriarchs from the Bible, including Jesus, into their religion. They do the same thing with John the Baptist. They do the same thing with Abraham. They just reimagine them in their global Gnosticism, as I like to call it, or as I call it in book 1, that has everybody on the same sort of path and way, not the way of Jesus, but the way of the Tao, way of Cain, there's a different way in every sort of polytheism. Why? Because they counterfeit everything that's in monotheism. So Gnosticism is the core religion coming through that creates a religion called theosophy. And theosophy means um, the wisdom of the wisdom of God, and multiple gods as they would understand it. And Gnosticism also created New Age. And Sophia, which is part of philosophy, meaning the love of Sophia, is the mother goddess of the 12 archons, known as the divine
Yep.
essence, right? So now you start to see some sort of connections in here. And in polytheism, they have a mother goddess and a patriarchal goddess. Their understanding or interpretation or reality is that the mother goddess would be equivalent to the Holy Spirit. So when they created the pantheon of gods, the fallen angels, the gods of the pantheon, creating a female imitation of the Holy Spirit is a blasphemy against the Holy Spirit right out of the gate. So anything to do with the divine feminine or the Atma or the Brahman or the divine essence, all talking about the same thing. And there's many different versions to this name of the Queen of Heaven as she is depicted. And Sophia is depicted just as the same as the woman in Revelation 12 is. So they use that again to draft that sort of imagery, and the Mary apparitions are very similar to that, identical, I would say. Visions of Hathor are the same, visions of Inanna. These are all queens of heaven. So it's not just Gnosticism that's having these visions or Catholicism, but it's also other religions as they try and sort of bring everything together. There's going to be a movement with this because of the Gnostic belief system, and the Gnostics have absolutely invaded Christianity. They believe in an interpretive approach. So anything you hear with an interpretive approach that isn't defined within the Bible specifically, and examples provided through the Bible, is that interpretive approach. They call it Christian hermeneutics. That's a Gnostic sort of changing of hermeneutics from its beginning, which is a Greek word. And it is the science of interpretation as they interpret their old myth and their religions. And you have to be an adept to know how to interpret that as part of the initiatory adept part. People below adept level just get pablum. But at the adept level and higher, you start to get the true secrets and the true meanings to the allegories. So they will spawn all sorts of misinformation within the church, cause lots of wedges within the church, and that's what they're there to do because they're preparing for the end time. So the divine essence is also the divine mother. Let me just back up a little bit. So as they do this invasion into the church, look for a feminization of the Holy Spirit.
Yep.
And we already see that happening. So it's not like this should be news. They will use things out of the New Testament like wisdom as it's used in, by some of the
Proverbs.
disciples. Yeah. And Proverbs I'll come back to, but wisdom is the Greek word Sophia, right? So, and
Mhm.
that's the wisdom that comes from the Holy Spirit. And particularly for the ones who are going to be giving the testimony of Jesus in the first 3.5 years of the last 7. And then they take that and they say, okay, so Sophia, wisdom, Holy Spirit, you see, we have biblical passages to do to that. But it's Sophia in Greek means wisdom because she provided all of the knowledge, because it's a polytheist culture that you're pulling all of this information out of. And so the love of Sophia philosophy, which is the theology of secularism, which is the theology of polytheism. Understand that everything that we have in the secular world is a puppet of polytheism. And once you start to understand these things, things start to make some sense. So we get into the Old Testament, and particularly in the book of Proverbs, you have the word wisdom, but wisdom's used throughout. But we get two different versions. We get chakam and chakma, or hakam and hakma, or I can't quite remember whether it's a K or an H sound there in the Hebrew. I have to go back and double check that. But The AH is the feminine form, and it's used at times for wisdom that gets translated into English. And they say, aha, see, when it has an AH, that means it's the feminine, and that's the feminine goddess, wisdom. Well, Proverbs 8, for example, has it throughout, but it's talking about Jesus. It's the one who was the first of creation, and all are saved through him. And so you also get Chakam, Chakam, as the root, and it doesn't have the AH that's used. AH can also be used to show the action of the word. So the noun, the verb. Okay, Chakam would be the noun, Chakma would be the verb and the action and the application of wisdom. So a little bit of a nuance under there. So if you get into something like Gibborim, for example, that is, I am is a male plural for mighty ones. Gibor is the singular. That's 1368 in the Concord Lexicon for Hebrew, and 1369 is Gibborah, feminine form of Gibor for Gibborim. And it's also used for mighty, but in the application of that might. You have Elohim, which is the male plural for the God Most High, and for, in the lowercase, for angels or gods. You also get the Hebrew word that's used, Eloah and Allah, for the application of God's strength, because El can also mean, as you take it back to the singular, strong, as well as a single angel or a single God or the God Most High in the uppercase. So you have to understand the application before you start manipulating what you want that to mean in terms of your preconceived conclusion. So they're using that and manipulating people and say, well, hey, it's a Hebrew word. It has to be that. And then it's duplicated in the New Testament with Sophia. So they make a compelling case, but we want to be very careful because God does not have a wife. There is a
Right.
tripart nature. There is the Holy Spirit, which is the Spirit of God, and there is the Word of God, the Jehovah of the Elohim, or the word logos of the God Theos, which would be the New Testament Greek version that becomes flesh in Jesus. They are branches, or he is a branch, but I would say the Holy Spirit would be another branch, as in the Spirit. And when God speaks, that's the Word, right? So when God said, Amar, he's there with the ruach of the Elohim in Genesis 1:2, the spirit of the of God. And Jesus also said in John 1:8, he's the light in Genesis, which comes in Genesis 1:3, that the darkness did not recognize. So he's there. He's just not fully introduced to us till we get Lord God or Jehovah of the Elohim.
Yeah. No, these are great points you're making, man, because I think we're setting the story straight because there's so many false narratives, seducing doctrines of devils that are really being pushed throughout podcasts and
Yeah,
big platforms as well with, I mean, a huge audience. I think it's to bring in, like you're saying, this new world order Gnosticism.
it is. Babylon is going to be the old religion.
Yes.
It's what we would call Babel at Nimrod. Babel means confusion of language in Hebrew, but it's also the root word for Babylon that we get coming through in the Greek in the New Testament. So Babylon as the city that Peter is writing from. Allegory also understood not only by the Essenes at the time, but as Peter, who seemingly would have been aware of it as well, as an allegory for Rome. And Babylon is the religion that rides the 10 king empire of the end time. It is the religion of all the beast empires. It is the religion that I call Enochian mysticism before the flood. And it's the religion that crosses the flood that's going to be implemented by Nimrod to get the first Antichrist archetype with that universal polytheist religion that Gnosticism takes their roots back to through what the polytheists called the Babel religion, which is Zoroastrianism, both before and after the flood.
Right, right. And it's going to come as enlightenment. It's going to come as light. It's going to come as liberty in some
Yes,
sort of way.
They call themselves the children of light. They call knowledge light. They say, walk towards the light, who is your true God, Satan. Not, they don't use the word Satan, of
It's
course.
crazy.
They'll use different terms like Lucifer.
Right,
And there'll be other appellations for him as well. You might even hear or understand the G in Freemasonry, understanding the religion as Gnosticism in the secret societies, as not as geometry as the fifth science, as you would get the pablum of the allegory at the lower levels before adept. G would be, as they reference, the angel in Eden in the book of Enoch, and that name is Gadrael. And if you take that back to Hebrew, which you can, even though we don't have a full Hebrew manuscript, those are Hebrew words. El is that angel for or God, as part of the names, like Michael or Gabriel, right? So Gadrael means wall of God or God's wall. What's interesting is it's not Samael as the serpent, as Jewish mysticism, which is a part of the secret societies and a sister religion to Gnosticism of the same religion, because it's polytheistic as well. So are the Essenes. That's the Egyptian form. Kabbalism is the Babylon, Syria, Persian form of Nimrod, but also understand that the religion went from Babel to Egypt as well. So just different pillars of the same sort of religion. But, when we look at this, this religion that comes out of Zoroastrianism and crosses the flood, it is the religion that they are trying to bring about for Babylon. And if we now connect that back into Gadrael versus Samael, Gadrael would be his cherubic form as we match that up with the Bible in Ezekiel 28, where it's not the seraph form, the serpent form, or the dragon form, because the seraphim angel is a serpent or a dragon with wings, a heavenly dragon angel. It's not his seraphic form in Eden, as many think, and as the Gnostics will tell you, because they think Eve produced a son through the serpent, Satan. Ezekiel 28 clearly tells us he's a cherubim when he's in Eden. The anointed cherubim that also walks amongst the fiery stones that the seraphim are ministers before the altar in. So Gadrael is likely in Eden, as Enoch refers to it, as the cherubic name for Satan, and he would have multiple names. He was part of the morning star order. And how do I get a morning star order? Job 38, 4-7. The morning stars and the sons of God celebrated at creation of the universe. Halel ben Shakar is the line for Lucifer, son of the morning, translated into English. So we don't get Halel, we get Lucifer. Lucifer is an Italian word that is substituted for a Hebrew word into the English language that is the god of the Freemasons and the Gnostics. You just can't make this stuff up. It should be Halel, son of the morning, as it's translated, just as you would translate Michael or Gabriel directly. You wouldn't translate the meaning.
Right. What's fascinating as well with that, I think it's Isaiah, right, where Lucifer's mentioned the only time in the Bible. It describes him as the morning star being known as Venus, Venus being that female divine.
Well, and those are
goddess.
the Gnostic and polytheist sort of propaganda around that passage. It doesn't say he's the morning star. It says he's the son of the morning. Jesus is the morning star. Yeah. Morning star is also an evening star, as in Venus, but it's a morning star for only 6 months of the year, and it's an evening star for 6 months a year. So it's not just a morning star. And it's a planet. It's not an actual star.
Yeah. How clever is our enemy? Because everything that he does is by taking what God's protocol is or establishment in whatever it is pertaining to Christianity, and he inverts it, maybe counterfeits it, whatever you can use those words interchangeably, depending on the subject.
I use the word counterfeit all the time. Polytheism counterfeits everything. Yeah,
right.
In monotheism, but counterfeits it with a corruption.
Yes, yes, and I love how you get into that, early on in your first book where you talk about just the bloodlines and the
Yeah.
names, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's designed to confuse Christians and monotheism and to lead them away from God.
Right, and
That's
I
their
think
whole goal.
it's so tactical because it now blends the enemy in with, the good guys, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah, and then they double down on that whole concept. So they, as you say, invert it. They become the sons of light, the children of knowledge, the good ones, the benevolent ones, and it's the evil God of the universe that enslaves us in the physical universe and doesn't want to give us any sort of knowledge and forces us to worship them. Well, it's the total opposite, but that's their sort of take on it. So when we look at this understanding that they are the children of light. They also have another, what I would call that was a macro versus a micro part of their religion. The macro with the good versus evil is that they create Satan to be the equal of God, and they fight perpetually. And all the gods of the pantheon are equal to all of the angels in God's army, and that nobody ever wins. It just goes over and over and over and over and over. The nuance is it does happen over and over, but there is a specific end in monotheism, and God is not the equal of Satan that they raise him up to be. But that's sort of the nuance, sort of different as they deceive people. And within, they have another duality of good versus evil on the micro level, and we would know that as good magic or white magic and black magic. We would know that as a good king or an evil king. We would know that as a white hat or a black hat in modern terminology that they throw out there. So, what they will now do with that concept on the micro is make a plausible story that the white hats have the better interest of humankind in mind. The dark hats are the ones who just want to wipe us from the face of the earth. The thing you have to remember is they still worship the same pantheon of gods who created all of their offspring to wipe humankind from the face of the earth to be remembered no more and would replace them with the offspring of the gods. So it has the same end. One is just more carrot than stick, so to speak.
Right, right, and the 2 become one, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Any sense.
Yeah. And look at it in politics. Republicans and Democrats in the establishment end of the party. It's the same coin. They present themselves as poles apart, but they're driving us in the same direction.
Right, right, and we can see more, results of what we're talking about, even just, shown in the Garden of Eden, right? Like, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is, like,
Yeah,
the duality and the nature of that tree.
it is. And why humankind wasn't ready for that yet. And so it's not that knowledge is good or evil. It's neither good nor evil. It's how it's applied. It's not
Right.
that technology is good or evil, it's how it's applied. The problem is knowledge and technology inevitably is applied for evil.
Yes. No, I agree. I agree. Just to piggyback a little bit on the feminine stuff, I had this thought where just looking at New York City, for example, Manhattan, right? The Big Apple. It's funny how
Yeah.
it's called the Big Apple, right?
Yeah,
Because there's this,
amazing, eh? The apple
yeah.
of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Or Apple has a bite out of it on its logo for its iPad and phones and
Yeah,
stuff.
isn't that wild, right?
Yeah,
Well, what else is a part of, that whole New York City, imagery is the
yeah,
Statue of Liberty, right? And the
yeah.
Statue of Liberty, Liberty
Female
can also
goddess.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? And Lady
Columbia,
Liberty.
Lady Liberty, Columbia, all these different queens of heavens and different cultures around the world, all the same religion, just different vernacular names for the same beings.
Right, it's almost like Mithra as well, right? Mithras or something?
Oh, well, that gets into kind of the ultimate in terms of importance to Gnosticism as it connects back to Zoroastrianism. So Mithraism was a major religion in the time of Jesus in Rome.
Right. Right.
as his sole invictus, essentially just different branches of the same religion. So this is the religion that is going to sort of be merged into Christianity with the formation of the Roman Church by Constantine. He's trying to create a homogenization religion, a homogenized religion that satisfies all ends of his empire. So this was done a few hundred years previous to that by uh, a king of Persia with Zoroastrianism. So Mithra, and we pronounce that with a TH, the old Sanskrit Indo-Aryan would be no sound to the H, Mitra. Okay, so Mithraism is one of the main gods of Zoroastrianism, and the Roman Mithraism is a branch of the main Zoroastrianism in Persia that gets merged into Christianity for the same political purposes that both kings were doing at different time periods. So Mithra goes back to Sanskrit and the Indo-Aryans of the Indus Valley as well. Mithra is kind of similar or akin to the Shiva god. So both of those gods are destroyer gods by fire. So basically, uh, I think Shiva has an evolution. I think Shiva evolves to replace Mitra in the Hindu religion because when you get into the roots of Shiva, they're not real sure where they come from, but then they have this other god that seemingly has the same sort of role. So Mitra is one of the main gods, and he's in amongst the tripart nature of Hinduism on depending on which of those Vedas and Upanishads and various religious scriptures that you're reading. And Mitra means covenant. And Mitra and a bond, which is kind of important as well. So it's a destroyer god that destroys the earth by fire, but will recreate the earth after the fire, out of the ashes, like the phoenix rising out of the ashes in Gnosticism and secret societies. And so Mitra is this God that comes back at the end of an age. And in this case, the age of Aquarius, as we would understand it through the understanding of the zodiac and destruction by fire that comes with the water bearer age.
Are we in the
Mit-
age of Aquarius right now? Sorry, I don't mean to cut you
yeah,
off.
it started in about 2012, which is
Right
why they said
on.
it was the end of the world and there was all that panic about that. So,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's all polytheism. We live in polytheism. We just don't understand all the polytheism that surrounds us. And so Mitra is destined to come back. But Mitra is like Vishnu, like Shiva, who has the ability to be an avatar and will select an avatara, just as it does in every ages. So they have multiple incarnations, which is, again, another Gnostic term within Christianity. What Jesus does is not an incarnation. What the God's counterfeit is, what a avatar relationship is like Buddha. Buddha is going to receive an incarnation from Vishnu, and Vishnu is going to provide the wisdom to start Buddhism. So it's pretty much a symbiotic relationship. We see this biblically with Satan entering into Judas to have the courage to go ahead with deceiving and betraying Jesus. And so even though Jesus knows he's going to do it, but he still needs this additional help, and that's what Satan does for her. That's how we know biblically that we need to be aware of this. When Jesus is created, the Holy Spirit creates an oiketerion within Mary. What is that? A soul and a body implanted that the spirit that comes from heaven is going to dwell in. There's three components biblically. Polytheism likes to only talk about the soul and the body, which is of the physical world, and not the spirit. Why? Because they can only do things within the spirit or within the physical world. So you have this oiketerion, so Jesus can interact physically and be half human because it's coming and growing through Mary and to atone for the sins. That is not an incarnation. Jesus also has the ability to do this without going through Mary. And God doesn't have sex. So this has nothing to do with what fallen angels do to create offspring like Nephilim or Rephaim. This is something distinct. For example, how can he do it without going through Mary? We get Old Testament examples with the angel of the Lord and Jehovah in particular of the Elohim, which is Jesus, before he becomes Jesus in the physical state. He is going to, at the Sodom and Gomorrah story in Genesis 18, take a physical body and present himself in front of Abraham, as well as two angels will do the same thing. So each of the uh, Jesus has that, or the Jehovah of the Elohim has that ability. Angels have that ability. Fallen angels have that ability, which is how they have the ability to create spurious offspring, right? To pass on the DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And to interact physically in the world, you need that oikoterion. So Abraham doesn't even recognize them as angels or Jehovah at first glance, because they look like a man,
Right. Isn't that
right?
wild, man?
Yeah.
That's wild.
And
It just goes with that other verse. We can entertain these things unaware. This is another
yeah,
idea.
yeah, it just as, yeah, I think you might be referring to Hebrews 13, where we want
Mhm.
to be nice to strangers lest we run across an angel unaware, right?
Yeah.
So they can be in human form and be recognized, because we get passages like that, or not. And just as these two angels weren't at first recognized by Abraham, when they get to Sodom and Gomorrah, the Sodomites also recognize them. So they have the ability to be understood as angels or not in that physical form. So this is not an incarnation that Jesus does. He's just has to have it come from a descendant of Adam to be the new Adam and to be overcome the world in a physical form that the fallen angels um, gave into with the corruption of the world with the corruption that they brought to the world. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing there. But so when we look at this incarnation that is going to happen or happened with Buddha, you have a symbiotic relationship with Vishnu going into the Buddha, creating the new Buddhist religion. Avatara is the receiver and receives the benefit of it. It's not demonic possession. It looks similar, but it's not. It's different. And possession is done by demigods, the offsprings of the gods and humans. They are an inferior being, as they're defined. These are demons, daemon, devils, as the KJV translates daemon as devil, which should be demon.
Right. What is it? Aramaic is jinn, right?
Yeah,
I think it
and
is.
there's two classes of jinn in the Quran. One are angels, the other one are the offspring angels, the demons.
Okay.
Right.
All
So
right.
again, so you see how this gets spread all the way through. So now when we look at why it's important to understand this avatar concept for the end time, is the new Buddha, which is the Gnostic, polytheist, Vedic Antichrist, is known as Lord Maitreya.
Right. Right. I've heard
Allegorically.
Maitreya by Alice Bailey,
Yeah.
right? And this
Yeah.
new
Lord
age.
Maitreya is the avatar for the Avatara of Mithra. You have Mithra right in the name. And so Antichrist creates a covenant. Mitra means a bond or a covenant. The 7-year covenant in Daniel 9:27.
Yes.
The angel that the Templars worshipped is Baphomet. But yet, in most accounts, we get told the knowledge and the angel that they held the highest regard because of the knowledge provided is Azazel, which is the leader of the Watchers is sent to the abyss in pit prison in monotheism, and or Orion in certain parts of polytheism to be hung there. Baphomitra means Father Mitra. And
Wow.
this was the organization who had a goal to infiltrate the Catholic Church to create the new Babylon. But of course, they were destroyed in 1307. So then there's an opportunity. I won't go through all the details of this, just do the quick version and end it. um, is that with Ignatius of Loyola, he's going to be sponsored by a descending organization of the Templar, the Montesa order, that took all of the assets, and a fellow who was a Grand Master named Francis Borgia is going to bail him out of jail because he was in there for the Inquisition. He's going to sponsor him through his Pope Black nobility bloodlines and his Basque nobility bloodlines that's in the court of the emperor of Christianity, that's the ruling emperor of Christianity of the Roman Empire of that time. The latter as an extension of Christianity. Um, he is going to sponsor the Jesuit order, and they're going to become the new Templars in the church to do the same thing, to create the Babylon for the end time religion, which is the Zoroastrianism that the Templars worship Mitra, which is a god of Zoroastrianism.
Yeah, it's all connected, man, and I really think this is something that we're moving forward with, as the world is moving forward with this. Obviously, the ones that
Yeah.
have the Holy Spirit discernment are recognizing some of these things. Again, some of this information that we're going over is not talked about in churches, so there's a disassociation of kind of this information. But
Yeah,
when you look at it, it rhymes throughout history. There's a
it
theme
does.
behind it, and it really is going to be this mystery Babylon. It really is going to be, Apollyon, the destroyer, coming into this world,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and Shiva and Mitra are destroyer gods, just as Azazel would
Yes,
be the destroyer god, that we would have, biblically through the book of Enoch. But we know there's a leader of the Watchers, and we know they were sent to the pit prison biblically. So
right,
it's
right.
it's kind of how you get there with that. So yeah, and it's important to understand all of this, that this there's nothing new, as Ecclesiastics 1 talks about, there's nothing new under the sun. What was will be again. And the understanding of this is only going to bring grief and sorrow. So this coming of Lord Maitreya is understood on a very relevant level as we understand 2025 as a jubilee year celebrated not biblically, because those are 50 years, not 25 years. But it's important in polytheism, even though I know the Catholic Church celebrates it as well. They bring that on in about the Middle Ages. But it's not the biblical one. Let's just be clear on that. That's every 50 years. This is the age, 2025, for a dawning of a new age for Gnosticism. This is the age of Lord Maitreya.
Right.
And it's also when he makes his entrance. I mean, we won't recognize him yet, but this would be the starting point to his entrance, as Alice Bailey referenced.
Right.
And this is the start of what she called the externalization of the hierarchy. And people are going, well, what sort of esoteric term is that? A hierarchy is the sacred assembly of the gods, coming out of Greek, as you understand that. This is an externalization, making it visible. This is the beginning of the return of the gods who ruled both before and after the flood for a short period of time, and that then disappeared for the crimes that they did, went to the pit prison. They still rule this world. They're just not visible. They're not
Right.
externalized yet. They still rule the council of gods that Satan sits over, just as Satan is still the god of this world for a short time longer. The council of gods is located at Mount Hermon, but in another dimension, one would deduce from that, and maybe even below Mount Hermon, as their heaven is in Hades and Sheol, not up in the sky. So this is a major event year for them as we talk about Zoroastrian, as we talk about Babylon, and as we talk about the end time and Lord Maitreya.
Right. It's crazy, man. And I think that so I wanted to ask you this, because this is what I personally think. And my thoughts go in multiple ways here. I can pick a few different roads. But it's all in the thought tank, right? So it's either the externalization of the hierarchy is that these beings, right, these gods of old, are appearing in front of us as rulers of the nations right now. Maybe it's an incarnation, effect, right? Where these spirits are not possessing. You kind of mentioned a little earlier, right? They're kind of taking the steering wheel of the car. That
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah.
Or
How?
it's going to be like an actual return of
Yeah.
some sort of non-human intelligence, ET,
Yeah.
whatever.
How this plays out, we don't get told, right? We're not given explicit details in prophecy, but we know the religion of polytheism is going to rule in Babylon. And it's going to be a universal religion, and it's going to have a mother goddess associated with it. That's very, very important. That's why you have to prepare monotheism with the feminization of the Holy Spirit with Mary apparitions. Mary is talked very highly in the Quran. Um, and as long as Jesus is reduced to prophet level, as Gnostic Christianity would have you accept, then all of a sudden you have the ability to satisfy Islam to a certain degree and Judaism. So now you're starting to move monotheism into the same sort of column and they're going to have to do that to have this universal religion. There will be splits in Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Not everybody's going to be deceived, but that's the tensions that sort of earmark the end time from a religious sort of perspective. So we want to be understanding of this woman, the imagery of the woman, and that it's going to be very much part of this Babylon religion as the daughters of Babylon ruled the world before Christianity started up.
Yeah.
And it's coming back and she sits on seven hills.
Right, right.
Typically in the time of John, in the time of the Roman Empire, this is the Septimonium. And people aren't familiar with that. That's where the Sibylline prophecies were. Cybele, female queen of heaven, with prophecies, right? And it was called the seat of idolatry, just as Babylon is described in part as the seat of idolatry. And the seat of idolatry was at seven hills that made up the original city of Rome. And Palatine Hill is where the Sibylline prophecies had their main branch. And Vaticanus Hill, which was outside the original walls of the original Rome, it became part of Rome proper inside the walls with reconstruction of walls in about 800 AD. But that was Vaticanus Hill, which was a branch location of the Sibylline prophecy. So look for Palatine Hill and a Septimonium church to be sort of built there and be heavily connected to prophets. Well, how does that connect into the end time? Well, Babylon sits on those seven hills. She has false prophets that are going to come along with prophets of doom for the female goddess in preparation to bring about this religion that rides the beast of empires with reins, will control this 10 king empire for the first 3.5 years. And Babylon has blood on its hands, not only of past, but in the end time of persecuting the saints, even before Antichrist comes to power.
Right, right. And so how I look at that, with the seven hills and just geographically and demographically here in the world, I think there's two positions where that can kind of lay out. It's either the Vatican where it is right now, right? Because there's still
Yep.
that makeup is still there, and also we have it in Washington D.C. Or maybe the three city states. I don't know, but especially I think that's why they built and they constructed with the architecture in Washington D.C. the way it is right now. Number one, because
Yep.
it's pagan. Number two,
Yep.
because it has the seven hills. It's resembling, honestly, what John was also talking about, right? And I think they are waiting for the right time, or maybe the stars have to align, right? I don't
Yeah.
know their rituals,
Yeah.
but they definitely want to initiate some sort of apotheosis ritual. It's ancient Osiris mythology. It's something is they want their god Lucifer to come into this world.
Yeah. And Washington is a city of light. It is a city like Sodom and Gomorrah, which were cities of light. It is Camus Lot. Lot is in there for a reason, connecting it back to the original cities of light after the flood, Sodom, Gomorrah, and the three other cities of the plain. And Washington may be a preferred location for one of the rising Antichrist figures and bloodline that they've created. Where it doesn't fit biblically is that it's not an ancient city. In fact, it wasn't even a city during the revolution. So it's not that old ancient city. So it needs to have that qualification that's in there as well. It would have to have been relevant for how Judeans would have understood it at that time as well. So you can make some cases. Constantinople also has seven hills and was the second side of the Roman Empire. So it fits well as an extension out of that Roman Empire in the same sort of Babylon, daughter of Babylon religion. Um, but again, it just sort of falls short of all of the other sort of requisites. But if we understand that there is also going to be multiple Antichrist figures in the end time, we're going to see multiple cities that are going to be religious cities, but maybe not the religious city. So this religious city is also going to be destroyed, and then it's going to be reestablished as a new city, not a new city, but reestablished within another existing old city, Jerusalem, figuratively called Sodom in Revelation, after he comes to power, after he destroys Babylon.
Yeah, you know what's fascinating is I've been researching alien cults, right? And one of those alien cults has been making its rounds throughout social media and has been presented on podcasts. It's being exploited, and it's called the Raelians, right? The Raelian
Yeah.
cult, right? Which was founded by Rael, which that was the
Yep.
name that these entities gave him, but his name is Claude Vorion, and he's a Frenchman. But one thing that I found interesting that can connect with
Yeah.
the conversation we're having is that these entities that approached him and told him to bring a Bible back when
Yep.
he came back on the second time when they had an interaction, they took him for a 6-day trip to their planet, but they deconstructed him from his initial perception of the Bible and they re-educated him on what the Bible's actually talking about.
Yeah.
But one thing he mentioned is that these entities which resemble what Lamb looked like, which is a figure that was drawn by Aleister Crowley, right? It's
Yeah.
it's the pop cultural understanding of little gray aliens.
Yep.
He said that they had long hair, and he said that they were more feminine than 10% of of what makes up a woman here on Earth. So 10% of what women are here is like how they're proportioned and how actually feminine these grays are, which just fits in with the divine goddess. I think I said that right, right? I mean, he's basically saying they're more women, they're more girl, more feminine than our
Yeah.
women.
They're yeah. I mean, just as you will see like Azazel depicted with feminine sort of aspects at time. As
Yeah,
a goat god. So there is that. And you could have, they could be single sex, but again, we don't really get scripture for that. Typically, how scripture works is, and how the world works is it's male and female for reproduction capabilities, but there's no reason why you couldn't have that created together. But that would take a lot of DNA manipulation to get there.
yeah,
Um,
no doubt.
and we do get beings like the grays in the Bible. Um, it's a ways of sort of getting there, but we have something in Galatians, in two passages in Galatians 4 called elementals. And that's the Greek word stoichian. And these are the ones that enslave us in this world. And then the book of Colossians. And it's also passages amongst talking about fallen angels and the hierarchy of the world and how things work. Stoichian is also translated as rudiments, again in Colossians 2, that's talking about the rulers of this world, the fallen angels. And elemental is an occult term for four groups of beings that are spurious offspring created by the gods in polytheism. They're Nephilim-like, but they're not as high in the hierarchy, and they're smaller. There may be this DNA manipulation that goes into it. So you have three groups of little ones, and then one that is taller than humans and is reptilians, and it would be a salamander. You have three groups of little ones. One is mischievous ones, and you have a number of them in there, like leprechauns. Just to name one. You can do a whole show on the different groups of these. You have good-looking ones, which are called the little ones, and you also have ugly ones, like hobbits, like dwarves, like trolls, and gnomes. And element, as you take that back to the Greek stoichian, can mean some sort of being or a basic element of the universe. So that application is also used as a basic element in the Bible, but it also has the occult connection to it, that these elements that they connect these four groups to is like earth, wind, fire, right? And air. So they represent those as part of this physical sort of world, as part of this hierarchy with different responsibilities. There's a group of ugly ones that has the ability to come through fairy domens, fairy portals. They have what we would know as UFOs or UAPs today. It's technology we still don't have. They kidnap people. They're looking to do sexual experimentations to rekindle their genetics and all sorts of other things that they're doing to monitor humankind. And then they return them, and people have no memories. And so not only are the events, but the descriptions of these are identical to the Greys in the alien mythos.
Right.
And so I think part of the deception is we're going to have this alien mythos presented to us as a cover story. This is my speculation, as part of the cover story to bring all of these spurious beings back, including the reptilians that are in the alien mythos. They're like higher up than the Greys. And the Nephilim, they're spirits, so they would need oikotarians of some sort if they're going to interact. So they have the ability to create other aliens through DNA chimera type of technology that we're developing today to create those oikotarians for that spirit. And so you have a visible hierarchy that includes the descendants of the giants that rule this world through the royales. And then you have the invisible ones who are going to become visible as well and walk amongst us like they did both before and shortly after the flood.
Yeah. It's funny because buddy of mine, Tim Constantine, his show is Sixth Sensory Podcast, but he mentioned on one of the shows he did with me that we're dealing with principalities, powers, and all this stuff, right? But
Yeah.
and he's like, what prince doesn't have an army?
Yeah.
Which may kind of, contribute to what you're saying, where maybe these things are hybrid, I don't know, avatar, or robots. You know what I'm kind of getting at?
Yeah.
Not robots, but the fact that they're vessels and they can receive, you know, spirits. If that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
If they can have an oikotarian of some sort that can house a demon spirit, you're going to have demons go in there. I think the angels can, with their changeling capability, can create whatever they want for themselves. They're a whole different level. And so there's a lot of orders of angels that we don't know a whole bunch about. We're told about seraphim. We're told about cherubim. We're not told about a phanim, although just only because it's not translated correctly out of Hebrew. So we actually get Ophanim as these ones in the concentric wheels in the throne of God. That's the beings in there is Ophan versus the wheels being Gilgal, meaning wheel as in Gilgal Raphaim, which is the ancient site at the foot of Mount Hermon, the wheel of the giants or the spirit wheel of the spirits, depending on how you want to translate that. But the ones in the whales have one face of a cherubim, so they're distinct from the cherubim.
Yeah.
And that's the Hebrew word ophan for ophanim that the book of Enoch will talk about. And we get archangels and we get other angels, but we don't get the whole host of heaven. Host is the Hebrew word saba for an army of angels with rank and order. And you have a loyal host and a disloyal host. And we're told not only not to worship gods and angels and stars, but the host of heaven we're not supposed to worship. That's the
Right.
rebellious host that
Yes.
represent
Yes.
themselves as stars and the planets, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what are some of these types of angels? You mentioned, principalities. That's arche. is the Greek, and it's the only way you can make sort of sense of this. Are also because arche is also translated as rulers. So it's the same angel here, but two different English translations. Like I say in a lot of podcasts, the translators haven't done us any favors in the consistency of their translations. You have mighty ones, which is dunamis. We don't know what these ones look like. And dunamis can also be translated as powers, which is, again, part of the confusion. You also have exousia, which can be translated as powers and is rightfully translated as powers, because sometimes you have dunamis and exousia in the same paragraph or in the same sentence, and it's not the same angel that they're referring to, as because they're separate groups. And also as authorities are also translated as. You have, Cartacci for dominions. You also have Icarus, which is a mighty angel, and Baphomet is an Icarus, as he's described, as one of these mighties. So we have lots that we don't get descriptions on, which means we ought to be prepared for different kinds of looking angels, because if you have a serpent-faced angel, you can have a cherubim when it takes a form with 4 different faces. They only take one when they take that form. It's a bull, it's a bird, it's a human's head, and it's a lion's head. So, and Ophanium has 4 faces as well. We just don't know which one of the cherubim, or is it all 4? We don't know, but there's 3 other ones that it could take a physical form with. So when we get like the howling gods in the Bible, we don't have one that's talked about in Isaiah 34 and 13 and elsewhere. These howlers, we don't know what angel those are, but they're also part of the description of jackal gods, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
more akin to Anubis, and howler is also associated as another description when it comes to Satan, as another one of his aspects of these different orders. He's so unique. He has aspects of all of these different orders. So we want to be careful at the complexity of this hierarchy, as they have the ability to represent themselves, but they will be at the top of the apex. How can we match that up in terms of how they might deceive us that way? Well, let's go back to the ancient alien mythos. At the top of the hierarchy of aliens are watchers. Watchers we still understand as angels. We have watchers that are understood as a Gigi and a Sumer, from a Sumerian word that's a shortened version of a Gigi, that means an eye, as in to watch. And these are the Anunnaki watchers. They're the same. They're used interchangeably in Sumerian texts. And we get Sumerian watchers depicted on reliefs. One has the image of a human head, black hair, black curly beard, has wings, kind of stocky, doing this ritual around some sort of Gnostic tree of life technology. And he's got an acorn or a crystal, and he's got a sort of a bag of technology or something that they're carrying. There's several of them there. You get that same relief setting also with a bird's head. These are cherubim watchers that they call the Anunnaki. And both Anunnaki and watchers are associated in the alien mythos.
Yeah, right, right. So what you kind of just described there reminded me immediately of the beginning of the X-Men, or the X-Men Apocalypse movie. I don't know if you remember it, but it's where they're doing this apotheosis ritual
Yeah,
inside the pyramid of Giza, and the elementals, or the principalities, the fallen angels, right, the watchers, whatever you,
yeah,
whichever ones they were the subordinate mutants to the main mutant,
yeah,
and they were trying to transfer over the consciousness and the life from the main number one mutant, which is like the god of like the other mutants, if that makes any sense. He's the first mutant ever, right? Which aka Lucifer, right? So he's transferring his consciousness over to one of the slave humans. so that he can live forever, right, and
Yeah.
continuously reign.
Yeah.
It's so funny how they put these things in movies, man.
Yeah, and it's why it's also important that we understand what an oiketarian is, or a sleeve, right? And this idea of transferring consciousness is only the spirit that they want to transfer. It's not a human spirit they're interested in transferring, because when we die, we go to sleep.
Mhm.
a, a Nephilim or a giant, it spirit doesn't go to sleep. Its body dies, but they either going to go as a terrible one to the pit prison, or they're going to wander the earth as demons, or they're going to make it to Sheol or Hades to be with their gods, but still a restless demon spirit. And the only way they can interact is with a slave. It's with possession, and that's not symbiotic because you got two hosts, and one's there to take over.
Right, right, man. So you mentioned something earlier, right? The hosts of the heavens, right? So it made me think as well with Mount Graham, the Vatican observatory that's up there, right? The three telescopes, the
Yeah,
submillimeter, the
yeah,
VAT, which is the Vatican Advanced Technological Telescope, and
yeah.
then you also have the Large Binocular Telescope, the LBT. But the main thing that is that's known about the observatory, which broke headlines in the 90s, was the Lucifer device that they have inside of the VAT, right? Telescope. And this Lucifer device helps them be able to see deeper, further, and more clear in the second heavens. And it's so funny that the Jesuits, they run the entire property, they run the observatory. The Jesuits are like this scientific realm of the Vatican Church. Uh, but what I find so interesting is Guy.
Well, just a quick note
Yes.
on that. The Jesuits use a lot of Egyptian imagery in their approach, and they interpret everything through the seven sacred sciences, which was the creative source to the mystical religions.
Wow. So there you go, right? And
Yeah,
it's so funny because it brings up Guy Consolmagno, right? Which is I'm not sure if he's still in the position that he's in, but I know a few years ago, this is back when Tom Horn was really investigating Mount Graham and the observatory, and
yeah,
what an awesome guy Tom Horn. He was one of the guys that was really doing God's work here. And but he was explaining that Guy Consolmagno, who's a Jesuit Catholic priest, which he's like the PR guy. He brings in the science and the religious aspect of things and kind of plays. He's trying to fuse them together. But he was even speaking in one of his books that was taken completely off of the Vatican website back in 2005. That he was talking about the possibility that we will be evangelized by these space brothers at some point in time
yep,
in the future, and that we need to consider reinterpreting the Bible when these things do come here.
yeah. And I have this in book one, about, oh, I don't know, that's section 4, I believe, that the Vatican is preparing to accept aliens and to baptize them.
Yes. Yes. And you know what how I see it is it's it's like when we transact, it's like a transaction. It's that, hey, you come here, we'll baptize you, but then you baptize us. It's
Yep.
like let's share this evangelism together.
Yeah.
And so the whole baptizing thing makes me think of false prophet. When I look at Revelation 13 and I see that the false prophet gives life unto the image of the beast, I see that it's a counterfeit inversion, whichever, right? That what John the Baptist did with Christ. I see that when John the Baptist baptized Christ, he buried him, and then I'm just saying, not the symbolism,
Yes.
but being going underwater, coming up, right? It's to be
Yep.
like reborn, and that's when the Spirit of God descended from heaven. And this was the, I don't know, what would you call it, like the anointing of Christ or something, or this was the maybe like a transfiguration. I don't know what to call it, but there was an event that happened right there. We know that, and I think that the Antichrist and the false prophet will share or counterfeit something similar.
Yeah. Look for the Antichrist, Lord Maitreya, um, the new Buddha, and we'll get, and like I say, we'll have multiple ones, but they will have to try and counterfeit everything Jesus did if you're going to replace them and come before. Also, meanings that you can associate with anti as part of Antichrist as you take that back to the Greek. So not only the opposite or enemy of Christ, but as an anti-pope, which is a replacement pope, as it was understood, just as we had a replacement pope with Francis for a while, because Benedict was still alive. Or when the royals got all upset at the pope and they took him off the throne in prison and put their own puppet pope on the throne.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah, that's where the anti as an anti-pope, anti as an antichrist. So we need to understand that if you want to deceive even the elect, if that were possible, you have to do things that Jesus fulfilled so that people who are Christian but not as knowledgeable as they ought to be are going to be deceived. So that's going to, include things, like a resurrection, right?
Yes.
You just
Yes.
have to, and of course, Antichrist receives a mortal head wound but lives, right?
It's
That
it,
right.
right,
And
right.
he's going to need a counterfeit Armageddon. He
Yeah,
may, depending on your belief system on rapture, he may need a counterfeit rapture in terms
right,
of when I say your belief where you think the timing is, or if you think it exists at all. Just trying to be inclusive here.
right,
I have a specific time that I favor, um, but expect that he's going to be able to do miracles. Expect that, and the book as Daniel talks about, and I describe a lot of the traits of Antichrist in book 2. He is going to receive knowledge nobody else has. And he's going to be able to talk with such authority on things that he's going to seem plausible, and he's going to take credit for an counterfeit Armageddon of winning that war as he moves his armies into Jerusalem to create the abomination.
right,
Uh, so we can't imagine everything that Babylon's going to do first, and then Antichrist rising amongst those 10 kings on his rise to power, what he's going to do. And then you're going to have a false prophet who is the false Elijah. Just as Elijah brings fire down from the heaven, so will false prophet. And he's going to do everything to make the way for this Antichrist and be the counterfeit Elijah. Everything will be counterfeited. So he's got to be able to heal the sick. He's got to be able to somehow mass produce food. I mean, he's got a long list of things he's going to have to be able to do. But if you're going to say Jesus was not the Messiah and he was just a mortal prophet, and what they talked about in the four Gospels, most of it was made up, and that we have a genealogy that says uh, he has descendants and that he survived the cross, then you have to fulfill the prophecies that Jesus also did.
right,
And
right.
then you have to announce your millennium. So his promise is this millennium, a false millennium. Everything has to be counterfeited.
Right, right. And you know what? For the people that don't see this in a supernatural idea or a view, which I subscribe more to the I listen, I have a lot of things on the table because I'm an investigator, I'm a journalist. I need to keep certain things on the table until I can fully rule certain things out
Yep.
based off of time and evidence and research. But when we're talking about the miracles aspect, right? Just for the people that don't have that supernatural view, let's just take a look at an actual carnal minded view of miracles. Well, Neuralink is something that can heal the people that can't walk. Neuralink is something that could possibly heal the people that can't speak or that are mute. There's technology that could be integrated with man that could also perform miracles. Just for example, Elon Musk, which my goodness is he showing a lot of characteristics of maybe false prophet, but I'm not dogmatic on it. The fire from heaven, he's able to shoot a rocket up into space, but then also land it. So it looks like it's fire coming from the first heaven, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense. This is a simple view to kind of understand that maybe this could be an idea. So I just try to,
Technology and knowledge is going to be a significant application here. And we have to understand that it's going to be like the days of Noah and everything that implies, but in a full understanding of the days of Noah, both before the flood and after the flood for 350 years. And that when we understand the violence that was before the flood, that's not with swords. This is
Hmm.
with the seven sacred sciences that merge with the angelic technology. And so much so, here's what the polytheists believe, and the Gnostics in particular, is that they knew a catastrophe was coming. They didn't know what kind, so they made uh, a safe location for all of their knowledge and or technology, depending on how you want to apply how they would understand knowledge, in 36,525 books stacked on 9 vaults underneath the Great Pyramid. And they put the directions to the location there according to, and this comes out of the Polychronicon and History of Freemasonry. They wrote the directions to this on 2 pillars. One was designed, the flood was designed to survive a flood so it could float. The other one, destruction by fire.
Right.
So they didn't know which one was coming. And God does an intercession so that the technology, which is planet destruction capability, having angelic technology, is what we're catching up to right now. That includes DNA manipulation and chimera, as they like to name that sort of sciences that comes out of, again, the antediluvian epoch and all of the technology that they had. And so 2 Peter 3 is a very good passage to understand a lot of things about prehistory on. Not only the template, what's going on in Genesis 1, and 2, but also the earth that was in the water, that was out of the water, that perished in the beginning. Well, in the beginning is the first 3 words of Genesis 1. And that this is a destruction that's in the beginning that has the fire reserved for the end time. So the fire of destruction that was in the beginning.
Right.
And the
Interesting.
earth that was in the water and under the water that perished. Well, the flood didn't kill the complete earth, only what was on the land. And what was on the ark survived, and everything in the ocean survived, but everything on the land. So not the whole planet. So
Right.
if you had a destruction by fire in the beginning, and this fire is reserved for the end time, and you have this intercession of destruction by fire or water, and turns out to be the intercession by water to delay the destruction by fire. If you have angelic technology that has the ability to destroy the world with fire, just as the Vedas and other polytheist religions have these wars of the gods that had planet killing capability, then you would have destroyed the earth down to its foundations in that war. It's a great time for the angelic rebellion. And what's significant about that is if you did that, the waters above that establishes the first heaven with the firmament, it would collapse. So now if you're going to renew the earth after Genesis 1-2, just as Psalms 104 says, in the time that's also associated with the pillars of the earth and the creation of the angels, it also says when God sends his spirit, the earth is renewed. Well, who's hovering over the chaos in Revelation or in Genesis 1-2? The Ruach of the Elohim, the Holy Spirit. And so we have this possible renewal of the earth. And if you're going to renew the earth, you would have to separate the waters below to the waters above and create life underneath. And that's exactly what happens in Genesis 1. And so now we understand that there's something in the beginning with this destruction of fire that we need to pay attention to, that actually destroyed the earth, that God intercedes with the technology to prevent from happening. So all the names in the book of life that were written in there from before creation will have an opportunity to leave those names left in or be blotted out by the choices that we'll make during our lifetime. And he intercedes with the flood. And you have this destruction that is described in Revelation and all the religions around the world in polytheism of destruction by fire in the age of Aquarius. So now things start to really make a lot of sense as to what's going on, and that nothing is new under the sun. What was will be again. and
Right.
that you had the angels who destroyed the earth between Genesis 1:1 and 2. You have a renewal of the earth, and then they're going to create giants to this time not have blood on their hands because obviously there are restrictions imposed on them that wasn't there before in Genesis 1:1 to 2, as the thinking goes here, and that um, you are going to create the giants to destroy humanity, is the Adamites, who have been created in a special commission to be raised up to be like angels, and to indict the fallen angels with the crimes that they're doing against us as part of this whole thing being permitted to play out. They're going to create the giants to do the dirty work so they don't get blood on their hands. And they provide them the technology to destroy the earth by fire again to justify that first rebellion, right? And then this destruction is allowed to come to full head in the ordained time when Antichrist is finally permitted to come again. One should deduce there was an Antichrist before the flood, whether his name is Orion, Atlas, or King Sudras, or another name, Sudas, not with an R in there, and that they came very close to destroying the world before the flood. So we have to imagine that technology. That technology shows up in the corruption of the earth. The whole earth was corrupted. All flesh was corrupted. Hebrew word shakath, which means to decay, to pervert, to ruin, to destroy. All flesh, all the earth. That means all the plant genome. So God had to call representatives of each species to the ark because he wanted to start free of corruption of the DNA.
Right. Right.
Part of the technology, the Chimera technology that they're reintroducing under the same name as it was before. And they're doing the same thing again as we get ready for the days of Noah.
Right. And I think that's why in the past 150 years to 200 years, I think that's why we have the growth in technology that we do.
Yes.
It's snowballing because technology advances technology. And I also think that it also plays into some of the the principalities, the fallen angel narrative, that they want a utopia to be built here, so that when they come here, it's not that they made this happen, that they're pushing their technology on humanity. They want humanity to develop their throne. They want humanity to to construct their throne. So through a Hegelian dialectic, right, that problem reaction solution, so that the people are responsible for actually building this whole
Yes.
utopia. So when they come
Yes.
here, they're not the
And
ones to blame. They're the ones to govern it.
yes. And will rebel with technology they believe could defeat the God of the Bible.
Oh my gosh. It's like Thanos. It's like the Avengers are coming here and they're like, Thanos is coming. We need to go to war. It kind of plays into Carol Rosin's testimony that she says when von Braun, right, the guy for NASA, on his deathbed, he was basically saying that the last card to come before developing a new world order is that we're to go to war with ETs.
Yeah.
And that we need to build space technology to go to war with ETs. But maybe that technology that they'll build with this false narrative is to actually condemn humanity and for them to
Yes.
rule over us.
Yeah. So in the sifting that has gone on with all of the things that go on in the earth, it's tough to make the right choices, but it's part of the sifting process. It's part of the separation. And so the scenario, what it does do is people declare their loyalties through their choices, but not like what's coming in the end time. That
Right.
the stakes are so much higher at that point in time. I think you're going to have to take an oath with that mark and swear your loyalty in the last 3.5 years. I think we're going to see troubling technology and things that look like Antichrist has come beforehand to further deceive people. So Babylon's going to create the system. And Antichrist takes over, takes it to one more level, possibly, but it's all in place for Antichrist to take over. And that's why he rises amongst the 10 kings and Babylon. and then destroys Babylon. And the 10 kings give their power over to Antichrist, but not before he overthrows 3 of them, with the additional details in Daniel.
Right, right, right. What are your ideas with the second incursion? Because before you get started, I want to
Yeah,
just kind of explain my
sure.
theory. And I
Go
think my
ahead.
theory is where we get context clues or little golden nuggets in Genesis when the angels, that were to, I believe they were to judge Sodom and Gomorrah, but they were eating, I think, with Lot. I get Abraham or Lot confused in this story. But they're partaking a meal in his home, and the men from Sodom were wanting to copulate with these angels.
Yeah.
And because I think that these men wanted to copulate with them, is because it was a part of their religion, it was a part of their history, it was a part of the stories that were pertaining to the antediluvian period, and maybe there were angels in Sodom and Gomorrah that were partaking in why Sodom and Gomorrah was so sexually immoral.
So what we do know is that, and I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying there. Um, I think you're going absolutely in the right direction here. So what we do know about Sodom and Gomorrah is that their crimes were equated with the crimes of the times of Noah in the Luke version of the days of Noah, where it gives you the days of Noah. Then it also says it's like the days of Lot, right? So that's telling you, and in book 2, that's why I start off with the days of Noah, to expand that understanding, then use all the other passages that are talking about the days of Noah and talking about these crimes that were in Sodom and before the flood. And in Jude 1:6, the crime of both the fallen angels at the time of the flood and of the time of Sodom is this having sex with strange flesh,
Right,
right? And the Greek word, as I recall, there is heteros, which means strange, yes, but strange as it's defined, a different kind, a different species, a different race,
right,
not necessarily same sex. And also keep in mind, angels have the ability to have a changeling quality. So they could change, and maybe they would want them to do that. Or maybe they're actually offering the daughters. But what we do know is this conversation is linked to, as a filthy conversation in the book of Peter, to Peter, as again to the crimes before the flood. And it's called filthy conversation. So this has very much been equated with the crimes of the fallen angels. So if we understand Sodom, Gomorrah, and the 5 cities of the plain, they're going to be ruled over giants at this time, as Rephaim and other types of giants are roaming the covenant land, and they're the aboriginals in the land of the covenant before Canaan moves in there. And Canaan should move over to Africa with the rest of the other Hamites with their allocation, but he moves into the covenant land, probably because he receives the curse of Ham, and he doesn't want to become a nation in bondage. So he's going to supply daughters for the second incursion and more daughters to create um, hybrids to make themselves a stronger nation. So you have Rephaim giants, and you have these hybrids like the Canaanites, like the Hittites, like the Amorites. And you get 9 patriarchless tribes. You get Heth and Sidon and Canaan, but the other 9 don't have a patriarch. Why? Because they have a Rephaim patriarch. Just like you don't get Arba as the patriarch for the Anakites, as Arba is described in the book of Joshua in the Table of Nations, or you don't have Rapha as the patriarch for the Rephaim tribes in Genesis 14 and 15, and these are all giants. He's not in there as well. So if we look at that they're being reigned over by giants, and we know that the giants, and people may not all be aware, but they have a fertility issue after the flood versus before the flood, and they have to intermarry with more humans to survive, because it seems to be a manifestation of lack of females being produced. And that's why more daughters are going to be provided to the giants to create the hybrids, just as the original Canaanite daughters would have been provided to the Baalim Council. That's recorded in the Ugaritic text that create the Rephaim giants after the flood. So Amorite would be, getting a name from Amaru, one of the Baalim council gods, or a giant named Amur that was named after it. And in Ugaritic text, we get a god named Amur or Amaru, depending on the translation, and also a giant tribe of the assembly of the Detanu, also by the same name. So now you have that as the source word as you take that into the Hebrew for Amorei for Hebrew and the Amorites. So all of them in book 2 of those 9, I take that back to specific Rephaim patriarchs. So Sodom and Gomorrah is the city of the plain that is protected by the giant kingdoms. How do we know this? Because they revolt against the the third dynasty, giant kingdoms as well, and that there's this great army created of 4 kings that are going to go against the 5 kings of Sodom. But do they attack Sodom, Gomorrah, and the cities of the plain first? They do not.
Mm.
They attack the Rephaim and the other giant tribes at Mount Hermon. Okay, well, do they go next to Sodom and Gomorrah? They do not.
Mm.
They're going to go down into the south and they're going to take on the Horim and the Amalekim and Anakim, and they're going to do wars against those giants. And they're all, and before they even get there, they're going to attack the Zuzim and the Emim on the western side of the Jordan River, going down there. And at the end of the loop, they're going to attack Sodom and Gomorrah. And so what they're doing is they're taking out the protection through the alliances of these giant nations to their inbred hybrid and nations that Rephaim kings would have reigned over. So they took that whole protection away. Then they attacked Sodom and Gomorrah. So they would have been completely familiar with fallen angels producing the original Rephaim, completely familiar with the fertility issue, and may have been the motivation for wanting to have sex with those 2 individuals. And I'm not saying you wouldn't have same sex going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, but it would be part of a complete list of things that were going on there.
Yeah, no, I think I think you're making great points, man, and I think that could, solidify a lot of ideas.
And another thing that's interesting is the Gnostics again. They have an account um, in their texts, and it details a creation of the giants at Gomorrah before the flood and replanted at Sodom after the flood.
Ah, okay. How about this? I gotta circle back around. We're gonna circle way back around, man, from when we first started. Because why do you think Lucifer has the nature of the feminine, or why do they believe that, or why do the Gnostics believe this?
That's a physical construct.
Okay,
There's no need for sex in heaven or to have a sex in heaven. So you could go by that basis as a spirit. Maybe they would have both being represented. But again, there's no need for that because they're immortal. They don't need to reproduce like mortals do, lest we go extinct. So that's where you would sort of start. And then they have the ability to take any sex that they want, just as we have female goddesses and male gods.
right,
So that's a duality aspect that they could take that form anytime they want, or they could take a dual form if they chose. So
right.
however they chose to represent themselves, they could do that with that changeling sort of capability. And so I think that's where, a lot of that comes from. It's more the allegory of the polytheist religion that forms the mother goddess and the male god as the chief entity that rules, and then the sun underneath. So you get I won't say the consort's name, but Osiris and his wife's name and Horus, because there's a terrorist group named after the consort's name. We don't want to get
I
things taken
appreciate you,
down.
man. Thank you. Thank you.
And that's the Trinity that's used in Freemasonry.
Right, right. Well, how about this? It makes me think of science. It makes me think of the Big Bang, right? It makes me think that the Big Bang was just this nothing out of something, that this explosion of that created time, space, and matter. But it almost resembles the the idea of delivery when giving birth. And I think that why Lucifer decides to take on this maybe this idea of feminine goddess is because number one, it's inverting what the true nature of God may be, right? Not maybe, but is, right? And then it also is like maybe just like a fu to you know, who he's an adversary against.
I think you could look at things that kind of way, and I'm sure polytheism has allegories that would suggest those types of things. I would be looking more not in that aspect, but just as part of their allegory.
Mhm.
Um, I think when you have both together, I think it's actually representing male and female, but as God and goddess. And so in the pantheons around the world, except for the chief one, in this case, Satan, um, there's a consort, right? They have this female counterpart, but Satan does not. Or did he?
Mm.
And what happened? And we get what's interesting is Antichrist is going to worship a goddess, possibly, as we'll get to. It's going to, private and in secret, in Daniel 11, worship a god of fortresses, a god of uh, of war. Well, female goddesses are also goddesses of war
Right. No, right, right,
and of
right.
fertility. Now, that word God there, that's not El. It's not Elohim, not multiple gods. This God of fortresses, and the Hebrew word there is Eloah, the female aspect. Now, again,
Ah, okay.
so is he worshiping a female goddess of fortresses, a war god, a fertility god in secret, or is that just the application being applied for these uh, warlike understanding of fortresses, which is meows, and that goes back to a root word of as and azaz. That's the root word for Azazel. That goes back to goat with ez, and the scapegoat that Azazel is listed in Hebrew, where the name comes from for the scapegoat on the goat sacrificed on the Day of Atonement, without explanation.
Hmm.
Sins
Right.
are sacrificed for Israel with the first goat, but we're not told who the sins are for with the Azazel goat, but probably the antediluvian sins or the angelic sins. I mean, however you want to interpret that. So we have a possibility here that when this female goddess comes back with Babylon, it's also going to be there for Antichrist. But do we actually have anything that we can say that Satan would have had a consort? Well, again, we get some imagery in the Old Testament, and I think you could probably look at it both ways. You have a Leviathan that is killed in the beginning, and the other one will be killed in the end time. And the one that's killed in the beginning is a female. Leviathan is a serpentine dragon type of individual, just as Satan is described that way in Revelation 12. And if this Leviathan, I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't part of creation and may not have been, um, permitted to stay on because we're told the world would not survive with both of them being there. Um, but it could also be an allegory for Satan's consort, and it's a female. And you can't kill a female. God kills this Leviathan. We get the same stories in all cultures around the world with Tiamat.
Hmm.
And, you have Marduk or Baal killing Lotan, Tiamat, Yam coming out of Mesopotamia. You have uh, Indra killing Vertra in the subcontinent ones. All cultures have the same story, just with the polytheist slant to it by an offspring god. And so Baal, Marduk, these are all offspring gods, Indra, and that rule after the flood as well. But they're not ruling before the flood; they take over after the flood. So the second Leviathan is going to be killed in the end time, but you can't kill an immortal being. In terms of our understanding of mortality, maybe God can, but that's, we'd have to, I leave that to God. We know he's going to send them to the lake of fire, which may be how you kill them, but they're there
Right.
forever. So,
The second
so
death, right?
yeah. And so you have the second one that's going to be killed in the end time. But the first one, if it couldn't be killed, where did it go? Probably to the pit prison, where the other angels that created violations were sent later. And so Satan goes to the pit prison at the end of the millennium. So it's going to the pit prison like death. While these fallen angels that are in the pit prison, in their accounts in polytheism, they're all killed.
Mm-hmm.
Even the offspring gods that go there, like Baal, is said to die, or his father El. So maybe it's just an allegory, and we're getting another allegory about Leviathan so we can better understand what's being said in the world about his female consort that goes to the pit prison. And here's the clutcher on it is that in Revelation 9, and as Antichrist is going to be associated with one that comes up out of the pit, this happens before the midpoint of the last 7 years. So Azazel's coming out of the pit prison. All of the most terrible demons are coming out. All the fallen angels are coming out. And if the female consort is coming out, all of a sudden you now have an entity that would be available to say, well, maybe Daniel 11 should be translated as a goddess there.
Yeah. It's also fascinating, man. I'm going to I have a couple questions here that my community wanted me to ask you.
Sure.
And so I can't fulfill all of them, and I hope everyone has some grace on me, but I'm gonna just kind of pick at random here. Um, so this is okay, so this gentleman has some questions about the Mazikim.
Out of
Uh,
the book of Job.
I believe so. Well, it says he says I am the Shadim and sorry, it's all kind of messed up. Am a label for the first set of Nephilim born. Same question for the Mazikim? Question mark. What is the difference between the two references?
Okay, well, it's not what I was thinking of as in terms as that's being used as the zodiac. It's very similar to a term in Job that is Hebrew word for zodiac. The Shadim I'm familiar with. I'm not familiar with the Mazikim. That could be an occult term or it could be a Hebrew word, but I'm not familiar with it. But the Shadim, shed is the root word. I am is the male plural.
Gotcha.
Okay, shed is a word that's used for a shade in the Old Testament and also used to describe a devil god as well. So shed, as we understand that coming through other languages, is seed or shay or Sidhe, Sidhe is how it's spelled. This is the transliteration of that. Those are the seed, shay people that are the Tuatha De Danann giants. And so people will look at the Shadim as being demon spirits. Well, she is also a demon spirit in the other world and the Shay people. So the Shadim would be part of the demigods that were worshipped after death, because as uh, in the hero cult in Greece, when the hero died, because that body doesn't go to sleep, he would come back to the city or the area that he reigned over and haunt them, and they would do rituals to pacify him, just as they would have done rituals to pacify him as an evil tyrant ruling over their city when he was still alive. So I would imagine, but I'm not familiar with Mazikim, so um,
Okay.
does not ring a bell on any of my research at all. But I'm not sure, again, the application where that sounds like it would come out of it. And and again, because of shed, that's a Hebrew word that would get shadim from as you add on the plural there.
Gotcha, gotcha. And that was by Trizzle, by the way. I just want to kind of
Yep.
give some of these folks some shout outs. Gary Joseph says reptilians. We kind of touched on that a little bit. I'm not sure if you want to go into too much
Well,
detail with
yeah, we
that.
have the elemental unaccounted for salamander reptilians, which are taller than humans, that typically are part of the alien mythos or living in tunnels and under the earth. But we also have a being that shows up in Eden that's called a Nahash and means serpent,
Oh,
and
and
it's not
real
Seraph.
quick, I don't mean to cut
Yep.
you off. If you could hybrid this with deep underground military bases, that's another question. So,
Yeah, maybe, maybe not. I know reptilians are. I just don't know which group of
Gotcha,
reptilians.
gotcha.
Okay, so Nahash is a serpent being. It was a walking, talking, intelligent being. It's not Satan, as the Gnostics would say, or the serpent seed people would say, and because Satan wasn't in the garden as a serpent, and Satan wasn't punished for the crimes. He was coaching or an avatar to the Avatara Nahash. Nahash is a beast of the field,
Mhm.
walking, talking, intelligent being. Nahash has a source word of Nahash as well, Nachash, and it means a sorcerer, a necromancer, a priest. And the beasts of the field are created before the people in day 6. So again, using 2 Peter 3 that I mentioned earlier, a day for 1,000 years, there could be 1,000 years between the creation of the Nahash and the people of day 6. And people will say, well, 24-hour day, you have you have the sun and the moon. Well, that doesn't happen until day 4. People say, well, you have the light. Well, no, Jesus said he's the light in Genesis 1:3.
Mhm.
That's not the light that goes inside the firmament after the firmament called heaven is established, right? So we need to be open. There could be 1,000 years to each day in the days of creation as it plays out in the physical world with us. And who knows how much time is after day 7 when you get into the Eden account. And is Eden actually the same creation? I would suggest no, but I need to shorten the story. So as we look at this beast of the field, this is a serpentine intelligent being that would be after the image of the most dominant ruling angel, the seraphim, the dragon creator gods, the dragon um, like gods, like in the plumed serpent or the feathered serpent or the nagas or the uraeus ones out of the Middle East that would have Baal, Osiris. All of those gods are depicted as flying serpent gods, uraeus gods, standard around the world for the most populous of the gods at the highest levels of the pantheon. So when we look at this serpent, is that was any of those saved? If you buy into giants survived the flood somehow, some way by fallen angels, and it's my second position, and I leave a crack open for it because God only was going to destroy everything He created. He didn't create the giants. So legally, you could make a statement there based on the language in Genesis 6, and then again in Genesis 7 on that. And so angels could have taken giants or Nahash, taken them off the earth, in another dimension, on arcs, a whole bunch of different ways that they could have helped some survive. So it could be the Nahash being that's distinct or is the same as the salamander being. We don't know, but there's possibly two different groups. Now, seraphim, serpent-faced, dragon-faced, reptilian angels, when they took a physical body, were able to pass on their DNA. So the original Nephilim looked just like the seraphim, serpentine. In fact, serpents was the name the Sumerians called both the gods and the kings, and they depicted them both as serpents, as you get with those Ubaid culture one. Although that may be even older than when the creation of the giants, they are almost like Nahash type beings, because they're a little bit different looking than I would expect a Nephilim to be. So they are serpentine beings, and if any of those were saved in the same way that I described previously, and ones that were created again after the flood by the offspring gods like Baal, who's a Uraeus god, and Meru, who is a Uraeus god, they would have looked like them too. And if they saved any of those in stasis or whatever way, then they could populate that reptilian aspect as well. And the relationship as you get into this with the giants in particular is that they were the warriors. They were the military class. They're the ones that would be most appropriate to be associated with helping U.S. military. But again, it could be any of them because the elementals are known for providing angelic technology to the people of the earth. So they're connected. We just want to not be too dogmatic as to which group specifically, but reptilian, sure, that makes a whole lot of sense that they would be part of it. It could be angels, it could be Nahash, it could be the salamanders, or it could be offspring of seraphim that were saved and spared.
Very fascinating, man. Thank you so much as well for, answering these questions. I'm sure the audience is loving it. We got one here. And how much time do you have, Gary? Just curious.
Yeah, we could go a little bit longer.
A
Yep.
little bit longer? Okay,
Yep.
cool. So we have one here. So he says, this is by Makuna, and this is a long one. So again, you can give whatever you want to give to the audience. It says, some desperate details that I'd like to know if Gary connects to each other. Shumar is an African deity. His gender principle is androgynous and fluid. His symbol is a rainbow. His messenger is a snake, and his icon is the snake eating its tail. Sarai, Abraham's wife's original name, also means fluid. There is a cryptocurrency platform using this name too, denoting its fluidity. ABE facilitated, Abe facilitated intimate relations between Sarai and the landed and wealthy to extort land and wealth. Jacob spent a night with a dark man in the desert, then became Israel after his epic deception of Esau. And then he goes on saying something about Muhammad, with, including Abdullah, Hanin. And he says, is the Lord of the Essenes Ashumar? I know that was a lot.
That's a lot to get to that last question. Well, let's just start with some of the imagery that is being presented there. So the imagery coming out of African traditions are all the same that are worldwide. And that's, if whether or not it's an Ouroboros with that serpent, clutching its tail, and some of the other descriptions that he made. Sarah is rooted in ruler, or a princess or a queen, but not really fluid. So that's not, there may be some Aramaic terms that may go in that directions, but not from the Hebrew perspective. But that's where you get Israel from, is Sarah, which Sarah is derivative of, which means a prince or a ruler, and El of God. So when you get in Deuteronomy 32, where it says sons of Israel in the KJV, means the sons of the ruling God, as you would translate that. And which is why you would have angels in the Septuagint and sons of God coming out of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're not wrong; they're all the same. And I also understand that that's a title, and it's a compounded word that title is given to Jacob. When we get into the Essenes, they don't have a single god. They are polytheist. They are descended through, in their writings, through the Therapeutate out of Heliopolis. And so they're more akin with the Egyptian religion versus Kabbalism, that would be more associated with Nimrodian or Magi religion. Same basic religion of old, but they all have sort of their nuances. The Essenes were recorded by Josephus, who lived amongst them, as being worshiping angels and receiving knowledge from angels. And they would not give up the names of these angels even by death and torture. And so these are not loyal angels. And the Essenes were guardian of this angelic knowledge. This is polytheism. This is Gnostic stuff. And that's why they're the basis for part of the organizational structure and the symbolism and the handshakes of Freemasonry. They're part of the sort of the organizations coming together with the royals of Masonry in Europe, with the Essenes, with Sabians, with Gnostics to form the Knights Templar, the modern secret society organization that spawns all the ones later after their fall that we're familiar with today. So the Essenes are also ones that are depicted in Ezekiel 8 that are worshiping Tammuz with the sunrise. They usurp Jesus, John the Baptist, in all the same ways as Gnostics do, not as the Son of God, but as a teacher of righteousness and a prophet, but not deity status. And they reject whole chunks of both the Old Testament and the New Testament. There are two different sects of them. I have a document on this where I walk everybody through it, because if you're a Christian and you've been brainwashed with the Essenes as being where Jesus came from, understand that's the disinformation that's coming from the polytheists as they invade Christianity.
Gotcha, man. Gotcha. Gary, thank you so much for this episode. I think it was an awesome conversation that I got to have with you. And it's been months since we've recorded last. I know I've got you a couple more times before the new
Yeah.
year, which is going to be even more fun. Listen, I just want to say I appreciate you. I thank you for what you do. It takes a lot to come out here and to donate and to just give me the opportunity, number one, but to just gift me with your time and your knowledge each and every chance you give me. So just thank you so much, man. Real quick, we're gonna finish up here, and I'm gonna move over to another segment. If
Yeah.
you could please just remind the guests, and I mean not the guests, but the audience, where they can find you and support you where you need it the most.
Okay. And can you give me the spelling on that Mazikim? Is that
Yes,
M-A-Z?
yes. So how they spelt it was Mazzikim.
We'll look for that.
Okay. All right. And folks, listen, for the community, that the questions that I didn't come around to, just understand, we've been sitting here for a few hours,
Yeah.
and we started to get kind of restless, a little tired. We could go on for 3-4 hours. I know we can, Gary, but I'm gonna cut us off here, and I will archive and make sure I come around to these other questions that I have in our
Sure.
next sit down. But again, man,
Okay.
where can they support you?
Yeah, so the best way to support me is through my website, the Genesis6conspiracy.com. That's Genesis 6, the number 6conspiracy.com. And the best way to support me is, if you like what I'm saying, is have a look at the generous excerpts of every chapter of book 1 and book 2, or the table of contents. And you can support me by buying a book, and you can buy it directly from me, get it signed. And you go to the buy now page. There's buy page one is book one, buy page two is book two. If you want to bundle with the discount, you have to go to buy page three. If you screw up and you wanted one of each, you buy two of book one. Send me an email. I look at emails every day for book purchases for that type of thing, or people want a longer signing or a custom signing on it. And there's a page for Canada. If you live in Canada, that's where you go. If you're in the US, there's a US page. And if you're anywhere else in the world, go to the international page. So I ship all around the world from Canada. And you can also get to the digital version from the website. There's links over there for the Kindle version for each of the books and for the Audible version at Amazon.com. I also have a direct link to the printed copy for Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, and BarnesandNoble.com.
Awesome, Gary. Thank you so much, man. And just with an overall last quick positive message, if you want to give to the audience, here's a couple of minutes.
Yeah, when we talk about these kinds of topics, it's can be intriguing like a horror story. It sort of grips us, but it's kind of dark because we're talking about a terrible history. We're talking about a terrible destiny, and we already live in a terrible world, and we're talking about it getting worse again. So, what I find is you have better peace if you understand why we're here, where we came from. You have a better understanding of where we're going and why, and understanding that this has to play out and that we are the resolution to the angelic rebellion. That's why we were created, and that we will be raised up like angels is the silver lining. But God is going through a process where only those who choose Him are going to be with Him in eternity. So we're told throughout the church, and we saw throughout the age of Israel, what we see throughout history is those who follow God go through tribulation. We don't go through the wrath. There's a difference.
Mhm.
And we need to understand that difference, and that in those times of tribulation, we are to provide testimony. And so we need to prepare for what's coming, to provide testimony for Jesus, and so that other people that we know will not be deceived. So if we are in the fig tree generation, and I think there's a good case that we are, and we're in the sorrows, we're certainly not in rapture period as was going around the last week or
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
That
yeah.
only discredits our credibility when people start doing those things. And we're not in the last 7 years, but we just might be in that last generation. We need to learn more so that we can help others. And we can't control what's going to happen, only what we can do, and understand what our role is. And when you understand what your role is, you're going to be at peace no matter how difficult it is.
No, right on, man. I'm with you. And we're really sending the message of Christ out there with all the different topics, right? Because everything connects to God, to Christ at the end of the day.
Yep.
And I just pray that I'm here to send enough of a message that people can analyze the information themselves and make that correct choice. If that makes any
Yep.
sense.
Yeah, and it's difficult, and nobody should want to go through the end time. It's horrific. And when I'm talking specifically the end time, there's what's horrific just leading up to it, but there, as in the language in Daniel 9, as you get into the last 7 years, and as you get into all the details that Daniel provides, there's the end, Hebrew Ketz, the last 7 years, and then there's the appointed end, Moed Ketz, which is the last 3.5 years.
No, I'm with you,
And
man. I'm with you
yep.
pertaining to, Revelation 6, the sixth seal. At the end of the chapter there, you see that, now comes the great and terrible day, day of the Lamb, right? This is like where the wrath of the Lamb has come, right? And
Well, it's
before
not there yet. That's the worst
right,
part.
right,
Yeah,
right,
that's just the seal catastrophes, but people think it is. And we are in the last 7 years. We're still in tribulation at that point in time.
right, right.
So the judgment doesn't come in full measure till Revelation 14:7, where you get the judgment, and Revelation 14:10 after we get the details of Babylon destruction, Antichrist implementation of the mark, then we get the wrath bowls poured out in full measure. And then we
Gotcha,
get,
man.
yeah, so we get the sequence of the main events in Revelation 14. So is that horrible? Yes. And the trumpets are 33%, but they're portioned, they're not full measure. And so we could very well be part of the seals and the trumpets, providing our testimony in the first 3.5 years, along with the 144,000, along with the two witnesses.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I have a lot of eschatology on the table, but I do subscribe to these ideas the most, man. And it's not, because of what I've read out of your book. I agree with you. I've come from a past where this was something that just this is how I read scripture, and this is how I see the church moving into the future with all of the other events that are gonna happen and take place. And you know what? Hey, I'm excited to really get into this into the next episode that we do together, because this is important information.
It is. And you know what? When I first started studying this stuff, I bought into the pre-trib as well.
Uh-huh.
And who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want that? But if you can't make the case biblically and you don't have a specific passage to define what you're divinely right dividing or adding, then we should be careful. We should only go with what scripture tells us.
Right on, right on. Well, Gary, thank you so much, folks. Go ahead, check out his books, but guess what? Check out Jesus Christ the most. All right, Gary, it's always fun, man. Thank you again, brother.
Thank you.
Right, biblical hitman debrief. Let's go. Gary Wayne in the house, everybody. Dude, listen, everyone, that was a fun episode. That was electric. It was a topic that really has been brought to my attention that I didn't dig into too much. I did some prep work within the first few hours before Gary got into the studio, just about the idea with the divine feminine. And first and foremost, Gary, thank you so much, man, for coming on to the show, giving me the opportunity to host you and to ask you some important questions, and especially questions from my community. As far as my community goes, listen, I didn't get to all of the questions, but I do have the names written down and the questions. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to circle around back to it on the next episode. But just please don't hold me entirely accountable for that. In case I forget, things kind of happen. Again, he's not the next episode I do with Gary is not going to be for another month and a half or two. So, um, but I'm gonna take some snapshots of that and really, really try my hardest, okay? But the divine feminine, there's something to it, and obviously, I do think that how we justified the case is that it's Gnostic, it's paganism, and there's this idea that it contributes pertaining to the Antichrist and a lot of the false gods that are out there that are going to also contribute in this whole convergence of many different things that are going to take place pertaining to Revelation. And when the Antichrist comes here, we know false prophets will rise. We know that false Christ will also be a part of this. We see this in the birth pains, right, of Matthew 24, not only earthquakes, rumors of wars and wars, but there's going to be, a lot of interesting stuff here, folks. There's even going to be miracles that are going to be taking place that are going to deceive a lot of many people. We know as well that the church has to have a falling away. If there's no falling away from the church, then there is no man of sin being revealed. And so these things have to happen. And I'm really praying and I'm hoping that we're not in this fig tree generation. There are a lot of wild things that kind of may pertain that, or at least contribute to the idea that we could be here. I don't know, but we really covered a lot of stuff. I love how we, got into, just that whole idea of that pagan nature of Gnosticism. And it's a very important thing because Gnostics are mingled in with Christianity. And I think, maybe not exactly, but this could be like a wheat and tares idea where this is how the devil infiltrates and blends in with the truth. He's been doing it for the longest time. He's been doing it since the beginning. This adversary of God. that's their main goal, is to blend in with the truth, so that if those that don't have the discernment, those that don't have the research, the knowledge, and the understanding of the Word of God, that they won't be able to distinguish, they won't be able to discern, the truth from the lie. And so, hey, listen, it's important that people are tuning into episodes like this, because these are things that are going to contribute, putting on armor, right, with our spiritual walk with God, putting on armor, so that we can face the world in battle, and just to help, just combat the flesh, right? Because the flesh likes to think as well as do. We know that the flesh likes to sin, that's the do, but the flesh also likes to think. And so we need to protect our thoughts, we need to protect our spirit, we need to protect the truth that lives in us, and at the end of the day, we need to make a decision, what road we want to go down. If we want to go down the narrow road, which not many take, or do we want to go down the wide road, the road that leads to destruction, that many do take? So, and this is a life, with not only decisions, but this is a life of accountability. And we're to be held accountable for our actions. That's why actions exist, in my opinion. And we are thinking people. We have the agency of our own consciousness and our own spirit. And so I can only just say, choose the correct path and choose Christ, right? Choose Jesus Christ. But folks, listen, what a banger episode. If you liked this episode, make sure you give it a nice 5-star review on the audio platforms, wherever you're at. And before I plug all the other stuff, I just want to say to the audience, getting through the ad space is something that really I appreciate from the bottom of my heart. I really thank each and every one of you for getting through the ad space. Okay. I'm not only just a husband, a father, and have a career, right? That I go to work and I run emergency calls for 24 hours, a 24-hour period. I'm off for 48 hours, but I'm not off. I'm working on this show. I'm working on the schedule. I'm working on shorts. I'm working on promotions. I'm working on editing audio and video. I'm working and I'm doing recordings that are 2 hours long. Okay. And plus, there's a lot of software, a lot of technology that we use today to be able to display this kind of information through the internet, through video and audio. And that kind of stuff does take a budget. But listen, hey, you folks are definitely showing how much you love the platform, how much you love the channel, how much you love the show by getting through the ad space. And in the future, just not yet, I'm going to really have to sit down and think about how I'm going to do this. I'm not up to par with the guys with the Patreon stuff. I'm not up to par with how some of these guys got all this ad-free entertainment space, but just give me some time. I'll figure it out. I got to definitely strategically lay that out and see what kind of plan I want to move forward with. But again, hey, listen, I love you. I love you guys. I appreciate you for getting through that. Okay. But listen, hey, if you want to support the show, it's free. Get over to YouTube. Make sure you smash that subscribe button if you like the show. Okay. And definitely hit that like button, drop comments. That's where I get to engage with the audience directly. And I try to get back to the audience as much as I can, as fast as I can, to every single comment. Because you folks in the community, you're a community, and I'm a part of it. Okay. You guys aren't my followers. You guys aren't, my subscribers. Like we're building a community here, and we're doing it for Jesus Christ. Okay. So I appreciate every one of you. I'm glad you folks like to tune into the show. And, while you're on the YouTube side of things, just share it with your friends. This is how the show gets around. This is how people, get informed even more than what they know. Okay. Not a lot not a lot of this stuff is taught to us in school. Okay. So let's get some information out there. Let's share the love. And, with all that said, folks, love you. Be blessed. Stay safe. And we're going to see you next time.